thanks again for inviting me out. It's a pleasure to be here speaking to y'all and talking about longleaf specifically. When Andy first gave me a call, he asked about talking about loblolly, and thought maybe longleaf would be a little more appropriate, and specifically to the Longleaf Pine Initiative and what's going on in Texas and across the South as a whole. So about myself a little bit. I'm a district forester here. If you haven't been able to tell yet, I'm not from Texas. I'm a Yankee. I'm from Wisconsin, so I talk a little funny.
Sounds just right to me.
That ought to say something to you.
Sometimes I say things that kind of throw it off, like about. About is usually I say about.
Dead giveaway.
Yeah, dead giveaway.
And at the hoose.
We're doing a program in a school one day, and it was for third graders, and I had a third grader come up to me after and ask if I was from Canada. It's about the most embarrassing moment of my career here in Texas. But when I first got here this afternoon, Andy asked what brought me to Texas, and I was in the military when I first got out of high school and stuff, and I went through basic training in San Antonio. And after basic training, I said, I'm never coming back to Texas. And lo and behold, here I am. But I also told Andy I met my fiance here, so very happy to be here in Texas and working with Texas A&M Forest Service. A lot of you are probably familiar with Texas A&M Forest Service. We got offices all over the state, and we're kind of split between fire and forestry. So we try to provide technical assistance for landowners, and we also deal with fire suppression and sometimes even prescribed burning, which most of you probably know Boo Walker, formerly being in my position, but now he's more of a state asset. Just kind of to poll the room, how many people actually own land in East Texas? Yeah, that's what I kind of figured it'd be a large majority. So, like I said, we're gonna talk about the longleaf pine, and we'll go through a little bit of a history and some of the challenges and the benefits of longleaf pine. It's a great tree, but it's not for everybody. Loblolly can produce some of the same benefits as longleaf, but longleaf has some benefits which we'll go into. Oh, and I guess one other thing. If you have any questions at any time, feel free to ask. I'm very, very open. We don't have to wait till the end. Yeah, I'm a forester by trade, an IT specialist. All right, so first off, getting into it, well, what is longleaf pine? Longleaf pine, it's one of our. It's got the largest seed cones. It's easily identified by its long leaves. If you see a pure stand of it, it's dramatically different than a loblolly stand. Just by looking at the leaves, it almost has like a wavy appearance to it. The leaves are kind of bent over, and not only that, it actually grows in different stages. So loblolly starts out as a seedling, and what it looks like as a seedling, it'll grow into a tree like that. Whereas longleaf, it actually starts out in what's called a grass stage. So you get this one shoot that goes straight up, and it doesn't get released from that stage until it can be decades if it's suppressed, but typically about 3 to 7 years, and then it'll go into more of a tree type stage. Another big difference is it's got a lot longer lifespan than loblolly, about 300 years. A big problem we see with loblolly is, I'm sure many of you have loblollies in your yard or around your house, and you get a lightning strike or winds come through, and all of a sudden that 100-year-old tree is on the ground. Difference with longleaf is it's going to be able to. It's got a much longer lifespan, about 300 years, and it's a much stronger tree, so it's even more beneficial for around the house and not just in the forested stand. Kind of one of the interesting things about longleaf is just how biodiverse it is. It's actually one of the most biodiverse stands in the Americas. So they put it just below rainforest as far as just species biodiversity. About 900 different species that are present within the longleaf ecosystem, which you can also reproduce with loblolly. So I don't want to give loblolly a bad name. Loblolly's got its place, whereas longleaf also has its place. And then some other benefits: straighter form, disease resistance, excellent wildlife habitat. So for all of you who were here in the 80s and 90s, southern pine beetle, big problem in Texas and specifically the national forest. Well, not saying it's immune to southern pine beetle, but it's more resistant because it's got that heavier sap flow compared to loblolly. And then fusiform, which isn't a huge problem in loblolly, more in slash pines, but it is a little more resistant. And it also handles hurricanes better. So it can handle those winds just because it's a stronger tree. So why the initiative for longleaf pine? You can look at this map and see, kind of its historic range. Used to cover the majority of the southern U.S. It was the main species present. It was habitat for numerous wildlife, such as red cockaded woodpecker. Is everybody familiar with RCW, red cockaded? It's actually an endangered species here in Texas, and one that the U.S. Forest Service, the Texas A&M Forest Service, a lot of state agencies are managing for, and it needs that longleaf ecosystem, open ecosystem with grassy understory. Something like the forest around here, it's too dense. There's too much vegetation, too much predation that can get at RCW. And then looking at Texas, historic range about 2.9 million acres, and that's a lot of acreage. But considering Texas's range was once 2.9 million, we got as low across throughout the whole U.S. We got down to about 3.7 million acres. So a lot of habitat was lost, partly due to favoring loblolly for its economical benefits. So currently we're a little over 4 million acres. The Longleaf Alliance was created a few years back, and we now have a longleaf task force in Texas. So we're starting to see more longleaf come back. This just kind of goes through, why longleaf disappeared. I'm sure many of us, we studied U.S. history, the cutover period, heavy cutting in the late 19th century, early 20th century. It wasn't until that restoration, preservation mindset got established that trees started coming back and spores, but it kind of selected more for loblolly instead of longleaf, just because loblolly, they're faster growing, easier to reproduce, whereas longleaf seedlings are a little bit harder to grow. They got a longer taproot, and they get a little bit more mortality once planted. But all that kind of led to the creation of my agency, U.S. Forest Service. That thing, early 20th century, kind of that conversion to restoration, subsistence lifestyle, livestock. That it all kind of contributed to its habitat loss. So it just kind of shows, the big thing is that 1955 to 1985. That's when that industrial landscape was starting to form across the South, creating loblolly plantations. And then 1995, 1.5% original longleaf present in Texas. So shifting gears again, why should we manage for longleaf? And I'll tell you, longleaf it's not for everyone. It's a long-term initiative, but it can be a beneficial one. Economics, we're actually seeing since the initiative started, the number one group to actually plant longleafs is actually TIMOs, so Timber Investment Management Organizations. It's not private landowners, it's not state agencies, it's actually private industry that's coming back and planting longleaf. And they're starting to realize, some of the benefits in regards to fire. So longleaf can handle fire much better. I mean, you put a longleaf in the ground, a year from now you can go through and actually burn that stand, which is loblolly. You did that, you'd kill your stand. The anecdote is, when you don't want loblolly, you can't kill it, but when you want loblolly, you put fire on the ground and you kill it. So, but some other benefits, longleaf, it's well adapted to different soil types. A lot of times people think it's only the really well drained soil or sandy soils, where it'll do well in moderately drained. The only sites you really can't plant longleaf is your bottomlands. You're not going to get longleaf to grow there. So once again, go back to that biodiversity. It goes across all the different sites, and then the cultural. One thing a lot of people don't realize is it's what built the South is longleaf pine. It was built off of longleaf and not loblolly, even though loblolly now is our number one species. And then economics, longleaf, it's a longer rotation. You're looking at about a 34-year rotation from putting it in the ground to actually getting saw timber out of it, whereas loblolly, it's about 24 to 27, somewhere in there. But the big difference is from longleaf, you're going to get poles, which are higher value for landowners compared to just regular saw timber. So you're longer rotation, but you're looking at anywhere from $50 to $80 a ton, whereas saw timber is about $30 a ton right now, even less than that. Yeah.
You know where that damn sign is up there on the 2500 Extension Road north of 943?
Longleaf, or which stand?
I'm asking you, I don't know what it is. It's state-owned land, and it's been there for years and years. It's on 2500 Extension Road.
Sure. I actually got a video that'll be coming up a little bit. It's actually that stand you're talking about.
Is that longleaf?
There's some longleaf present in there.
Okay.
We actually did some burning yesterday. We burned that stand, so I actually got a video for it. So, kind of framed this presentation knowing that I was guessing the majority would have some kind of land or know somebody who has land. And a lot of times, so one of the things I deal with landowners on a daily basis, going out to their property and offering them technical assistance for, they might have a 40-acre tract, they might have a 10-acre tract, they might have a 1,000-acre tract, and they got questions, well, what do I do with this stand? And that all starts with, meeting them on the ground and kind of figuring out what their objectives are before we even proceed, because the difference between managing for solely for timber production compared to wildlife or legacy, it could be different routes, or the objectives could cross over. Wildlife might carry over with aesthetics or something like that, because you want an open stand, you don't want a lot of yopon and briars. So, it doesn't matter if you're managing hardwoods, loblolly pine, longleaf, just establishing your objectives early on. What do you want to do with that stand? And then, once you have those objectives in mind, that's where a professional can come into place, is what is the actual state of your forest? If you have a thick pine plantation with yopon and briars, that's something you're going to want to address if you're considering going to longleaf. Is if you don't control the yopon, you put a longleaf stand in there, you're gonna kill your longleaf, or you're gonna have higher mortality. So prior to harvesting, you may want to consider some kind of herbicide treatment, prescribed burning, what have you. You also want to look at some of your desirable species, like gay feather or tick seed, beautyberry, stuff like that, stuff that's in the stand that you don't want to get rid of. So if you're going to use herbicides, you might not want to apply a mazapure or something that's going to kill them, you're going to want to apply a herbicide that's going to favor those species, favor your grass species. So, kind of going back to your question, this is a stand last year that we burned, and it's hard to see in this picture, but you can see a lot of yaupon in the understory, and that's not a biodiverse stand. That's basically a desert. There's nothing there for wildlife. Deer will browse on yaupon, but it's not a favored species. But after burning, you can start to. We burned that sand, and this summer actually saw a lot of gay feathers coming in, which is you saw a lot of swallowtails and butterflies coming in this summer, which is pretty cool considering that it's been about 10 years since that stand's been burned, and after one burn, you got different types of vegetation coming back in. And then preparing the site kind of goes right along with it. You can't. I sold a tract 2 years ago, and it was 60 acres, and it was planted a year ago. And I did a heavy herbicide spray prior to the planting, but I put loblolly in the ground. If it was longleaf, I wouldn't want to do that because I would want to bring my grass species back. But I did it to really favor the loblolly and get good efficient growth on my loblolly. So kind of considering before you prepare that site, if you're going to do longleaf, you might not want to do heavy site prep. You got to select which type of herbicides you're using, and then target the undesirable species. And promoting the grass. The grass is what's going to carry the fire later on. And then last is just early stand management. If you plant longleaf, you got to do prescribed burning. If you don't, longleaf will still grow, they'll still survive, but you're not creating the ecosystem. You're just putting trees in the ground. And longleaf's all about an ecosystem and bringing back that habitat, which it's got 900 species present. And also brown needle spot. It's a disease that longleaf gets if you don't burn. So here's some of those stands we burned. I'll actually show you a video. Just kind of, not that people are afraid of fire. Fire actually can be quite beneficial as long as people are doing it that know what they're doing. And as far as the flames, flames don't hurt the trees. Loblolly, longleaf, their bark protects them from it, but yaupon, it consumes the yaupon. It seems to me like 36% relative humidity. You get below that, yaupon it's like gasoline the way it ignites. It's pretty cool to see. But that stand we burned last year, and this year, it came back. It's a beautiful grass stand that we actually followed up this year. This was the burn we did yesterday, and a lot easier to control this stand burning this year. We didn't have to strip it out as much. Flames are a little more in check just because a lot less fuels, a lot more favorable species like the grass. So you can kind of see the grass in the foreground. And just a beautiful sand because you don't see this in East Texas much anymore as far as grassy understory. A lot of times you see yaupon and briars. So kind of last, if anybody has any interest in longleaf, there is assistance available. As far as technical assistance, Longleaf Alliance, they're excellent. They got a lot of know-how. They deal with all of the South. The Longleaf Task Force, they have a grant available at Texas Longleaf Conservation Assistance Program. Provides 50% cost share to landowners for replanting and burning. And then EQIP through NRCS, they have about 75% cost share. So there's assistance available. So kind of kept it short, just knowing we only had 20 minutes, but I hope it was beneficial to y'all. If anybody's got any questions, or if you have questions you want to follow up with me later on, that's fine too. We're here to assist landowners.
How big a stand do you burn at the time? It varies?
So it varies. Like y'all probably saw that smoke column this weekend coming from from San Jacinto County. That was a 900-acre burn that the U.S. Forest Service was doing. And they got ships involved, whereas we burned 100 acres yesterday, with people on the ground.
As far as the U.S. Forest Service is concerned, I'm not talking about like Weyerhaeuser and Champion and whatever, but as far as U.S. Forest Service, do y'all manage any of your tracks for hardwood? For like nut-bearing trees, as far as hickory, oak?
Sure. And that's mainly, as far as the tracks I manage, it's mainly my streamside management zones or riparian areas that I'm managing for hardwoods.
Is there a distance like from the trees? I mean, is there a zone there?
Yeah, typically 50 feet minimum, maybe more depending on the site. As far as Texas managing for hardwoods, like I come from hardwood country. You can grow great hardwoods in Wisconsin and the Midwest. In Texas, sandy soils, hardwoods just don't, they'll grow, they just don't do as well. You don't get the stocking, you get a lot of dieback, that sort of thing. But there's bottomlands that people, farther north Texas, you get a little more hardwoods.
Just in general, between Weyerhaeuser and Champion and International Paved where, I don't guess there's any such thing as a natural stand around here hardly.
Yeah, not really.
In turning a pine tree into lumber, is there a big difference between logwood and lumber?
Is turning it into lumber?
Yeah.
Yeah. So longleaf, it's a slower growing tree. It doesn't. They're actually doing genetic improvements on them currently, so you might see better growth. But that's why longleafs. Well, one, it's a straighter tree. It's got, it's more like a pole. It's straight up and down. But the other side of it, it's got tighter growth rings. So a lot of those poles, that's what the pole company want. They want a lot of growth rings close together on those outside growth rings, just for strength purposes.
So in other words, longleaf would be a little bit more in pole production than in lumber production.
Yeah, that's correct. But still would make good saw timber too if used for that. All right. Well, I appreciate you all coming out.